The Amazing World of Gumball is a beloved show that took Cartoon Network by storm. The show was pretty much an instant hit. The showrunners of the series, Darwin, Anais, and of course Gumball, would get into cartoonish shenanigans accompanied by the plethora of side characters as well. The show even going as far as to give their own background character their own episodes, which was super awesome.
Mother, I'm bored. Will you not go faster?
Yes, that sounds like a very good idea.
However, there was something about the show that was never supposed to be seen by the public. Because, picture this, you're sitting home late at night and decide to turn on some Cartoon Network, and what plays before you is an episode of The Amazing World of Gumball, but it's one you've never seen before, or even heard of for that matter. And what is shown on screen is Gumball standing in the corner in a state of anguish inside of the school, because his siblings have been abducted. And that is the premise of this bootleg episode of The Amazing World of Gumball, one that is super disturbing and one that, honestly, it was pretty hard to watch. An episode that was never supposed to be seen by anyone. Hey everyone, it's Wowman, and in today's episode I wanted to dive into the deeply disturbing case of the Grieving. So now what started as a creepypasta that began a couple of years ago sparked an onslaught of videos being created to replicate the airing described in this creepypasta. Now there are a ton of adaptations of this creepypasta, but in this video I did want to focus on these two, as I found that these were the most creepy of the bunch. There's a lot of other ones as well, but those are kind of poorly made and are kind of cringy. And this first video is called The Grieving Re-Take, which was created by Vibing Leaf, and if you guys know Vibing Leaf already, we've covered the Happy Appy video, which was super disturbing.
I've missed you.
Also incredibly well done, so you know that this one is going to be even better. The video begins and we're shown the siblings having fun, rejoicing in their friendship, but then it cuts to Gumball standing in a classroom alone at night. And if you guys have watched the show before, you know that Gumball is pretty much never in school at night because they only go during school hours, so seeing him in this classroom at night in this very disturbing position just makes it all the more creepy. Gumball then goes on to say, "I didn't save them, I just watched them run away. Away from that monster, I didn't save them, it's all my fault." Then cutting to black another time. And what we are shown next is somebody saying, "Anais, do you hear me?" No. And we can see Darwin standing in the snow, his arm ripped off and his eyes bleeding. And if you are an Amazing World of Gumball fan like myself, just watching this video is just super unsettling and just gives you like a really bad feeling in your stomach. And before we continue, if seeing Darwin with his leg ripped off wasn't already freaking you out, it gets a lot worse, because it does seem like Darwin is looking for Anais in this snowstorm that they are lost in. The both of them running from a monster that Gumball watched them get chased by but did nothing. And then we're shown something pretty grotesque, so if you do want to skip this, I'm going to describe it first and then you can decide if you want to see it or not. Because after this, Darwin is hit by a baseball so fast that it ruptures his skull and kills him. So timestamp is right here if you do want to skip this. I mean, I am also blurring it, but even then it's still it's hard to look at. We're then shown a box which contains Anais's head inside of it. So yet again, another timestamp in case you want to skip it. It's going to be blurred, but again, it's pretty gross and grotesque. Her head is also left in this very gruesome state as well. There's a deep scratch across her eyes. Her eyeballs are popping out, and it even looks like the bottom of her jaw is ripped off, or at least the skin is. And then after we're shown that hard to look at sight, we're then shown the monster that is responsible for these horrendous acts. The screen then goes to black, and then this next part I'm definitely not going to be showing because in the video we can see that Gumball, after finding out that his siblings were killed, he decides to no longer carry on with life. This take on the creepypasta is extremely dark. I mean, the original creepypasta was a lot worse, actually. I read it beforehand, but to see it play out like this in video format rather than just reading it in a text document, it makes it all the more disturbing. The video then comes to an end and we can see Richard and Nicole grieving their 3 children. Nicole, yes. Did we do great as a family? We did, Richard. We can't do anything about this. But no one is to blame. What is most important is how did we do for them, and I'm sure we did amazing. We did what we could. And at the end, it gives us this surprisingly kind message. Take your time, it's going to be okay. Aside from the shock value deaths that this creepypasta is known for, I do really like the ending that Vibing Leaf put at the end of this video. Because in the original creepypasta, it's really only centered around shock value deaths, which isn't really my cup of tea, and horror that's relies on shock value isn't that great anyway. Like in the original version of the creepypasta, the way that it plays out is that a guy ends up watching Cartoon Network late at night around 1 in the morning and sees an episode called The Grieving, and within it we can see Richard crying on the couch in a suit. Nicole comes in to cry with him. The narrator of the creepypasta mentions how odd this was, but decides to keep watching. Nicole and Richard are in Principal Brown's office, and he informs them that Darwin and Anais have been missing since lunch, and they haven't been seen the rest of the day. Nicole, furious at this news, decides to go off at Principal Brown, saying that, you're supposed to be watching our kids, why are they missing all of a sudden? They wouldn't ditch school. Because knowing Anais and Darwin, those are two characters that you would never see skipping school. But after Nicole gets finished yelling at Principal Brown, he informs them that they were eventually found, but they weren't found alive. He then goes into graphic and nearly nauseating detail describing how their bodies were found. Their parents sitting in utter shock. I could hardly believe what was happening. How could such a cheery and fun kids show be taking such a dark and twisted turn? Anais's head was found in a bloody box, and Darwin's eyes were gouged out. The creepypasta ends with the narrator going to the police, telling them about this disturbing broadcast that they saw, but the police doesn't do anything, and he was the only one to see this broadcast, apparently. The creepypasta also goes into some other shock value things that I'm not going to mention because they're kind of distasteful, but regardless, this creepypasta is what spawned all of these adaptations, including the one that we just saw. There is also another adaptation that I did want to mention because it involves a character that is already in the show, a character that is super creepy even on its own. And if you're a big fan of the show, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, because it's the clown. The clown is this reoccurring character in the amazing world of Gumball that is always hiding in the background. And from what I know, it started as an Easter egg within episodes, but then it turned into this whole phenomenon that would reoccur on the show. There's even entire videos on YouTube documenting every single sighting the clown has within episodes. And so in this adaptation, the clown is the one committing these murders, finding Darwin and Anais while they're paintballing and subsequently killing them. The whole thing is very creepy, especially taking into account that this is a real character, a character that haunts the show already. Also, I just started YouTube membership, so if you want to join and get early access to videos and custom emojis, it's only $1.99, and that's a bargain, so you better join. But yeah, huge shout out to all of my tier 2 members already, as well as my tier 3 members, K-Pop Lover X3, and Night 98. But yeah, thank you for spending some time with me. It's always super great. Happy Pride, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Tunnel and finds himself face to face with a door until he musters up the courage to open it. And inside there's a room filled with tile.